Good. Well, I'm going to say good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think my guest might say good evening since we're in two separate parts of the world, Los Angeles and London, but they come together in a real big way, especially because of this music, man. Music is what really universally brings us all together. And we're talking with a dynamic player that's in the game, that's created not an industry, but a company that encompasses all of our music. I'm going to let him tell you all about it. We're talking about Gearbox Records, and we're talking about its president, CEO, the man on top, the guy with the creative mind that makes it all happen. His name is Darrel Sheinman. Good morning, sir. For me, how are you?
All right, not too bad, thank you. And good afternoon to you.
Yes. Well, Los Angeles and London getting together, and actually you've done this a few times in terms of some of the artists that you have on your label. And it's more than just a label. We're talking about, an entire producing these records in such a big way. First of all, tell me about Gearbox and your inspiration behind creating it.
Well, I started it back in sort of 2008 in my mind, and then physically in 2009, but as a hobby. And that was mainly because, I'm a drummer. I was a drummer from 8 years old. I still play, but not professionally. Exactly. And I just felt that also enjoying audiophile music and whatever, I just felt that, there was an absence of making sure that music's reproduced as well as it can be. There was too much music being thrown out there for commercial reasons. And so I wanted to make sure that bands were recorded correctly, that they were mixed and mastered correctly, and then put on the best format possible, which in my mind at the time and still is vinyl. And in those days, vinyl had completely dropped off. So it was quite an easy area for me to start getting clearances on vintage recordings that had never been released before. And the area that was quite easy was jazz, because jazz was also slightly unfashionable then. And so I would get a lot of hard bop stuff. Well, it was certainly unfashionable in this country, not necessarily in the US, but here. So I would get a lot of the big British jazz players, Tubby Hayes, Joe Harriott, Michael Garrick, and put their stuff out that hadn't been released before, and they were delighted. So that was how it all kicked off. And then after a few years, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, talking to the jazz cat, man. I've always been affiliated with this music, and in my career of being a radio host, I remember playing some Tubby Hayes on the radio for a decade ago. The thing about it is, when you have artists that are in London and here in Los Angeles, it's like I played it once and then that's it. There's no promotion. There's no ongoing, oh, Tubby Hayes, or there's no ongoing thing, and it seems to drop off the map. So how are you bringing the sounds of jazz from London and the people that are in your area? How are you bringing these worlds together?
Well, that's a good question. So, I mean, for example, let's take Tubby Hayes for an example, because we started talking about him. I found a big band recording that he'd done for the BBC as the very first release for the album and for the label. And it was, he didn't do big band that much. And in fact, there wasn't that much of his archive material around or available. So that garnered some interest. And then what you do to make sure the interest doesn't drop off, you keep finding stuff in his name that hasn't been released. So once I got to know his son very well, who was clearing all this stuff and was very happy for it to be cleared, I sort of had free reign to start searching catalogs and libraries and everything to find all this music, and then clear it. Most of it was radio stations or even personal family collections. And you keep a continuity. So we did that with Joe Harriott, we did it with Tubby Hayes, we did it with Michael Garrick. I've done it with Dexter Gordon now, and So that's how you keep that solid interest going, because then people start to say, let's see, maybe what's Gearbox got. You get known for it, and if the quality is good, which we're always putting it on 180 gram vinyl with lovely sleeves, we mastered it the best way possible. And in fact, I built my own mastering studio, which is where I'm sitting now. That's our cutting lathe in the background. You keep everything in house, which means your quality control is really good. And so then you just build a custom base like that. People start to think, okay, maybe they've got something here. It's not just a flash in the pan. And we've been going for 11 years now, so hopefully it's working.
Well, one of the biggest things that you talk about and we love in music is quality. And you, as well as someone like me, it's a no-brainer. We love the music and we're very passionate about it. So we're going to put all of our energy and all of our effort and anything that our name is going to go on. We want that to it's quality. It's how you build yourself. That's how you brand yourself.
Exactly.
I want to talk about, what it actually goes into making these quality sounding records. I mean, if you can kind of walk me through some of the different steps and also in terms of making the vinyl process. Vinyl for these folks here in today's day and age is retro. So it's like, oh, vinyl. Oh, it's nice for most average folks to say, oh, a record, remember that, and are we getting back to that?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Both my kids wanted record players, and they listen to hip hop and dubstep, right? So, and we actually at Gearbox we make a record player, so of course they both got one of those. But the process is depend. Firstly, if it's an archive release, the first thing I have to do is QC the quality control the recording. So we have to make sure that if it's a live recording and it was done at a club, the quality is probably not going to be great. It was probably recorded on a reel-to-reel stereo or mono in the back of a club. So it's got to be listenable to. And the only way that I would let it go through to the next phase if the quality wasn't as high as if the energy was massive. So we have got a couple of releases which they're not the best sound quality. You might not hear the piano so well or the drums, but the thing is the energy, you can feel the audience, you can feel the energy of the music. That's just as important in the quality stakes. For a new band or contemporary band, because we do a lot of contemporary artists as well, the important thing is to get clearly good musicians. Step one. Step two is to go to a fantastic tracking studio. So like with Dwight Tribble, we did the Sunset Sound, which is one of the great world studios. And there's something important about that, because as soon as everyone walks in, they feel like they're in a great place. We did it in the room that Prince recorded stuff, everyone just feels great when they walk in. And so that helps the production process. And so you've got good music now, good musicians, good recording space, and then you move on to the mix. And you've got to find, obviously, your engineer. I like to use usually the same tracking engineer as mix engineer if I can. And that gives a continuity and an understanding of the whole process. And then finally, the mastering, which we do here. And we've got the finest of sort of modern and vintage gear. We're not sort of nostalgia heads who just like old stuff because it's old. We like the best of everything. So we've got a mastering desk that's modern, mass select stuff, and we've got an old tube 3-band EQ, which is a Decca thing from the 50s. We've got all sort of this lathe behind me is the same as Rudy Van Gelder used at Blue Note. So Scully. So we mix everything up so that we just get the best sound. And then you've got to get it pressed properly. Pressing plants can screw things up. So you've got to make sure that all of that is properly quality controlled. You get test pressings done. You listen to your work. You recut if there's a minor flaw. You recut. It doesn't matter. You don't make excuses. Just do it. And all of that comes, there's a lot of stages, but all of that comes to a final good end, good product, I think, I hope.
Well, Darrel, you're a young man. You know, we're both young men here, and it seems that you've got like a world of knowledge about all of these. I know you're a crate digger, man. You've been digging all of those, you know, blue note sounds and going through your jazz things for all these years. But, you know, how is it that you got into this game of producing records? I mean, did you go to school for this, or did you just jump in and start learning?
Actually, no. My dad used to play. My dad's a bit of a music guy, and he used to play Dave Brubeck a lot when I was young. So that obviously is important to me. That's probably where the jazz foundation came from. But as I grew up and learned the drums, I then actually I was quite a serious punk rocker in my teens. There's just the rebel spirit, you know, coming out, which actually jazz is a rebel music too, so it's not that dissimilar. And then I went back into sort of jazz and played in sort of a Weather Report style jazz band, and I think that sort of got me deeper into stuff. And then I started becoming a groove drummer, but I didn't go to school for it. I started recording my own stuff just like by playing on tape machines, cassette machines, and then overdubbing, you know, with 2 cassette machines. So you'd play one back and I'd play along live to it and build up this sort of multi-track thing that degraded every time I put a new instrument on. But it was great fun, and I understood a little bit about the process. And then unfortunately, or fortunately, I decided to go and study chemistry for my degree, and then went into the money side of the world and started to do jobs just to make money, really, rather than for passion. And after a while of doing that, you start to get a little blunt. So I eventually, I can't bite the hand that fed me. When I made enough money, I left and spent it on building studio and buying in copyrights.
Well, that's what people with passion do, man. You invest all your money, you know, hear great sound. And speaking of which, you know, it's not just, you haven't just built this, you're continuing on. You just branched out into Japan, which you visit quite often. And tell me about how people in Japan understand great music and the quality of music, especially obviously for me when it comes to jazz.
Yeah, well, I started going to Japan actually for my last business because Mitsubishi invested in it. So I then started to learn a bit about their culture and realized how musical they were. And then I started going back again regularly every year I'm a martial arts instructor, and I was learning Japanese art, so I was constantly going back. And but of course I wasn't just training, I was enjoying all the little jazz clubs they have, and the fantastic sort of bars where they play out music with amazing hi-fi systems. And then you go in and you just drink and you don't listen. I'm sorry, you drink, you listen, you don't talk, I should say. That's brilliant. But it's just an amazing atmosphere, and I just can't really understand why they're so into this warm, rich sound, and they get it right. They research things, they get the speakers right, the hi-fi right, the type of cartridge right, and the atmosphere is fantastic and fantastically natural. And so that's really informed a lot of my thinking about how the sonics should sound, you know, how the end product should sound. And so going back to Japan now with an office is just a wonder.
Well, you know, it's much appreciated that you take all of your time and invest in this quality of sound. But what are we gonna do? You know, it's 2020, man, and all they do is click this to listen to their music. It's
Well,
you put all your work into this for people to be playing music through an MP3.
So that's really good. I mean, I have had to have a certain amount of commercial reality, and we do obviously now. When the label started as vinyl only, but we put out our artists on vinyl, CD, and streaming and high res. You have to to survive, you've got to be able to get an income stream from everything. But also, after a while, being vinyl only was somewhat elitist, and I didn't want to be elitist. I wanted people to like the music too. So we now master, obviously, for MP3 and any other format that comes out. We've done MQA, we do everything. So I don't really mind anymore. That day of it just being vinyl has passed. Just as long as whatever we do is the best, it doesn't matter. We'll make the best MP3 and the best vinyl, the best CD. It doesn't matter. It's all about quality. I mean, even our CDs are not in jewel cases. They're in mini vinyl sleeves.
Mm. Oh, cool. Well, you know, you talk about, you know, this music, and of course, it all starts out with the great sound of a band. And, you know, me being in jazz radio for many, many years, of course, I feel I know what the good
Yeah.
sound. And that's how I curate my show, by like, yes, this, no, that.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
We're the kind of same kind of person in terms of when it comes to the quality of music, whether it's jazz or whatever else you produce. You apparently have the ears and the discernment to know what is a good quality sound, and you're investing so much money into a band, into, you know, let's just say
Yeah.
um, Dwight Tribble's latest recording, and you got Mark DeClivelo that was there. It's like, all right, well, you got guys from America, you're in London. I mean, you got to tell me how all this works and how much money is invested to getting this great quality product. And then, of course, the back end, the marketing side. How are we going to get this out all over the world so that people are buying this record?
Yeah. It's very hard. I mean, you know, this is the sort of smallest business I've been in, but yeah, it's probably the most multinational.
Yeah.
So it's quite difficult running a truly international business where you're selling into really fragmented markets all over the world. And we're 8 people. I mean, it's insane, really. But you go through the process, you believe it, and also it's a difficult business because it takes a good 18 months to recoup your costs.
Mm.
So the artist doesn't get paid for a good year and a half. We don't get any money back till we've covered those costs for a year and a half. So you've got to be quite well funded as well, which is why a lot of labels struggle to do more than a couple of releases a year. And luckily, I've sort of got a few friends of mine who have been shareholders, and that's helped us have a bit of cash to do this process. But yeah, it isn't cheap. I mean, just, you know, let's take, you know, we got Kamasi on the album with Dwight. We got Mark DeClivelo. There's you know, all sorts of great people at Darrel Records. So it was tricky. You got to pay them a fee. You've got to pay for the studio. You've got to stay in hotels. You've then got all, like you say, the marketing afterwards is expensive if you want to get selling around the world. But luckily we found some great PRs in the US and in the UK and Europe. And you know, this helps. The artists doing a lot of work for themselves too, building up their profile on the social media platforms, making sure they tour. You know, all that's really important too. So it's a combination of things. It's a very diverse business.
No doubt. And you said making sure they tour. I mean, that tour, I would imagine that's on the artist, or is that on you to be a part of them touring and playing the music as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, we try to help them book stuff. We're not very, I have to be the first, we're not really a 360 label, so we're not very good at that part of it. But we do tour support. So if an artist is struggling and they're on the road and they want, we'll advance them stock. We will maybe cover certain costs for various gigs if they need, and so we do try and help where we can. It's
Oh,
such an important part of the whole.
it always seems to be such a recoup business. I mean, for people who are passionate and just believe in the quality of the music and the sound, and to do all of this and put it all out there, I'm like, well, there's all my money out the door, and now we have to spend our time, getting it,
Yeah.
and for the artists too. I know how music is disseminated, here in America, of course, being on radio. I see that it, goes on the labels, it goes to these companies, they have these agents that contact us and like, oh, Leroy, check this
Yeah.
out, here's this music. And I'm like, all right, I get it and I'm able to choose, oh, and then of course, it's up to me what I want to play on the radio. I don't know how it's done all over the world, as you may know. So, how is the market in Japan? How is the market in other parts of the world and the country? I mean, what uh, what is it that you have to go through to get the music and distribute it into those?
Well, another good question. Loads of good questions you got. But the thing is, I would say, in spite of all the digital platforms, online and Spotify and whatever else, still the best way to discover music is the radio, without question. So I actually make a lot of discoveries, particularly outside of the jazz genre, if we're signing anything there, listening to the radio in the car. And I hear a track that's great, and I remember, I've got to check that out when I get back. So, and I remember somebody, I used to have a guy working for me who's now an advisor to the company, but because he's older and he's sort of semi-retired, but he was a director of Sony, and he said that there were studies that actually discovery is not on Spotify. People think it is, but discovery is from somewhere else before you go to Spotify. And what people do is then they go to Spotify to check the music and the rest of that catalog.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's very true for me. Most of my just music discovery is obviously gigs. That's clear, going to live gigs. My colleagues who are younger than me, who might see bands or be involved in bands, everybody who works for me is a musician, by the way. So they're all doing a bit of session work or composing. So they're giving me scouting tips. I will go along and have a listen, but a lot of it is off the radio. People like yourself, you play something, it's really good. And the same for us. That's how we sell records. If I can get something played on the radio, it's critical. It's so important. And I've even got a little radio show, not as big as yours, but on Soho Radio here in London. I curate. My goal is to curate a whole wide range of things, from classical, rock, jazz, funk, punk, just so that people can hear all sorts of music. So really important, the radio.
Well, I kind of feel that the radio is important too. But also, it's like here in, let's just say, Los Angeles, there's radio stations that are very conservative. So all they do is kind of play everything that's like in between the lines. I'm not that kind of a guy. I'm a very, I've got avant-garde flavor, I've got classical flavor, and it's going to take somebody who's got these different dynamics and sound to be able to put these things out there for you. I'm a seeker, so I'm always seeking new sounds in music. If you give me a CD that's piano, bass, and drums, and in a sentimental mood, and my favorite things, I'm like, I'm gonna put that on the side, man. But what? Cello and bass clarinet, alto flute. I'm like, what is this? Okay, so that's the kind of guy I am. I'm assuming you're one of the same kind of guys that you really want to hear something extraordinary before you sit down and invest a chunk of money into
that's right.
a product.
Yeah, and that's why it's not just radio, it's the type of curator on that radio station that matters. So, and there are certain type of if a DJ says, I want to play that track, you're kind of excited. There are certain types of DJ you want to target.
Yeah.
Because they have the respected curation skill. So I think that concept of curation is really, really critical. And actually you can see it even on the platforms like Apple Music and Spotify, because again, which playlist you're on is the same sort of idea. Can you get on a playlist? This is really important to making sales and getting our music out there in the same way that radio is. So
someone told me a long time ago, they said, Spotify doesn't pay us any money. So I personally, I don't listen to Spotify or Apple Music because I know that the artists aren't getting paid. So I'll try to do it in another way. So those are avenues that I don't use for music. how are they benefiting you in terms of what you do? You just mentioned like playlists. So should I, as a jazz person, should I take what I do and start putting things on Spotify so people can look and check it out there? Or
Yes, I think so, because you could start your own playlist. You're a respected DJ, you've got a good name, and therefore, if you had a little playlist running, you'd get a lot of followers, and they also would know, of course, where you broadcast. And I think there's a kind of seamless thing. Plus, by doing that, you are actually helping the artist, because because people will come to your station because of what you do, and you're a respected curator. You're making more streams for those artists. And these days, a lot of the artists make a lot of their money off streaming. Yeah, less so for the smaller artists. The big artists make more, but they need to be. If they're in a good playlist, they will actually attract quite a lot of streams, and that's quite important. Yeah, and Spotify is one of the worst payers, but there are other platforms that are actually yielding just as much. Amazon have a very good one which pays them more. Yeah, iTunes pays a bit more. Tidal, I think, pays the best. So by doing that, you sort of do pay the artist actually indirectly by just encouraging more streams.
well, I'm supporting the artist, which is why I didn't. But maybe I should look into it because it's like we want a nice thriving music economy, man. And what you're doing with Gearbox Records is really extraordinary, especially the amount of time and money that you invest into getting this quality sound. So tell me about some of the latest artists that and albums that you've released on Gearbox.
Well, we've been quite strong in the sort of UK jazz scene. So people like Binker and Moses, the sax and drum duo. We've just actually released a direct-to-fan record of a live recording we did at a gig some years ago, which will be probably general release later on next year. Theon Cross, who is a tuba player who plays with a band called Sons of Kemet as well. We have obviously the Dwight Tribble that I've just talked about. We did Abdullah Ibrahim, who more probably well known as Dollar Brand as well, which has done very well, called The Balance, that album. Just released very recently a Charles Tolliver, which was called Connect. An amazing album, and we had Lenny White and Buster Williams on the record as well. A guy called Dan Rosenboom from the trumpeter from
Those are my people.
your neck of the woods. That was a great Absurd in the Anthropocene. That was a brilliant album. Binker Golding, a solo album from him. Yeah, and we got some great cuts coming up as well with people from all over the world. So it's exciting. Our first ambient cut and first Japanese artist we've just signed, which is ambient music. So yeah, it's an exciting moment.
No, it sounds like it, man. It's an exciting time, and it's really kind of crazy time for us too. With this world pandemic that I had a series. It's called Just Jazz, and
Yes.
every week, man, we had extraordinary artists. I had it lined up all through. I was booked a year in advance. I'm like, I was done. I'm just sitting back to come by, and so many of those live performances. It's just the energy that you get from that room. It's
Yeah.
and I'm always trying to offer up to the public sounds and things that I know they haven't seen, and that's good and bad. One, you're always going to get something, brilliant. Two, you may not know who it is because I'm not playing people who are necessarily popular. I'm playing good music, and I've already, like you do the investment. I've already invested time into letting you know that this is good, and I'm trying to share that with the public. So, it's a fine line that curators walk in terms of putting something brilliant together, man. But all of that is on hold.
Yeah.
moment. I can't wait to get back to it. And when we do, man, you and I need
Yeah.
to connect and let me know about some of these London artists and what they're doing. I just interviewed Nabaya Garcia the other day,
Oh, yeah.
who's brilliant. And
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
she's on our Theon Cross album, actually. She plays sax on that. Yeah.
nice. See, these are things that I don't
Yeah.
know about London, so we probably need to exchange some things. I'll share some music with you, some shows that I've done, and then you can kind of see the playlist and
Yeah.
whenever you got free time, which is probably never, just sit back and listen, and hopefully you put some of this on your list too, man.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I mean, I have sort of exercised an option to do Dwight's next album. Unfortunately, we were supposed to have recorded it actually in June, but unfortunately, pandemic says no. So that's still on the cards, and I intend to try and do it again at some Sunset Sound. So if I'm back in LA, we'll meet up. You should perhaps even come to the session, maybe.
My number one guy, man. That's my beautiful brother, man. So yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
I actually talked to Dwight about you a little bit. So, oh yeah, dude, it was cool. I'm like, all right.
Okay. Good. We're trying to line up some nice collaborators for that, so it could be quite interesting. Yeah.
Well, like I said, when we get back to this live music, it's going to be best for all of us. I'm glad that your business, Gearbox Records, is branching out. Now you're in Japan, and I'm sure you got more ideas on where else to take it, man. But you're doing a great thing for the music, especially investing in this quality sound. And
Thank you. Yeah.
appreciate you, brother. Keep doing what you're doing.
And you too, keep doing what you're doing too, because without you, we couldn't exist. We need people who, showcase people's work. It's great.
Together, man. This is the
Yeah.
we all do our little part. The only thing is, out of all of this, I'm really hoping that the public and see, I don't know how to think from this place. I know you don't either because you're creative. So I don't know how to think from the mind of a layperson. So what do you think lay people think about all of this sound and all of this quality? They may not be the biggest music followers, or they may say they like jazz or whatever genre it is, but all of this is for them. And I'm really
Yeah.
hoping that they appreciate all of the energy and effort that goes into what we do.
Well, I sometimes think they don't, unfortunately. Not that, I mean, but also I sometimes think that's okay. If they were to angst about how much effort and had gone into it, it might ruin the experience. In a way, you want them to have a flawless sort of final product,
Yeah.
which is good, and a package. And what we really want the lay person to be as a fan and just enjoy it from a passionate point of view. So if they see tickets for sale for Chimino, who was an artist we just released, I want to go, I just want to go, that's good enough, because what that means is everything will flow through.
That's the entry point, and then they'll get the music, they'll hear it, then they'll get the CD, and yes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the one thing that we've just set up a little publishing company, because the one area that we haven't been strong on, just because it takes a lot of effort and focus, is synchronization. But that's a real big discovery area for artists. Sorry, for lay people who are watching a Netflix thing and they hear a piece of music in the theme tune or during it, and they go, "What's that? What's that?" That's a way to become a fan as well. So I've always felt that a record label that has signed an artist is in the best position to keep pushing that artist in every platform. And so it's almost incumbent upon record labels to have a publishing arm, because we're going to do the most work for that artist, probably. So this is why I thought, why aren't we pushing for sort of that kind of element as well? So now we're really working on that, which is quite exciting. It's a new departure for us.
And you say you don't have a 360-degree business. Come on, man. You're supporting efforts on each particular point, man. And that's
We're trying to,
yeah.
but I wouldn't call it 360, because then you're committed. And what I'm doing is slightly, if it fails, then it's okay, because we were never quite fully in it. No, I'm just kidding. But we probably do more than we think. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, man. Thank you so much for being on the Just Jazz Cafe with us today, man. We appreciate you. You got a chance, ladies and gentlemen, check out this brother right here. His name is Darrel Sheinman, right here on the Just Jazz Cafe. We appreciate you, man, and thank you for all of the things you're doing. I know you'll be out here in Los Angeles soon, and we get back to traveling. Who knows, man? I'll get out there to London or something.
You're always invited here to our studio.
Together, man. And just to let you know that you have, you got people on your team out here for you too, man. So whatever we need to do, we're gonna do for you. Thank you guys again for tuning in to the Just Jazz Cafe. You just heard from the president, CEO, curator, everything there is to do about Gearbox Records. That's Darrel Sheinman. Thanks so much, my friend.
And thanks for having me, and thanks for all the good work you do as well. Long may it continue.
Absolutely. Same to you, man. We both have to do our best to make this music rise to the top, man.
Absolutely.
That's why we're on the earth.
That's true. Exactly.
Okay, guys, we'll see you next time right here on the beautiful place for learning about all of these wonderful people. And that, of course, is the Just